Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Famicos Foundation Community Podcast. Happy summer, everyone. We are in actually knee deep in summer. I hope everyone is enjoying themselves and staying cool in the wet, in the hot weather that we're getting, and staying away from the bad air quality that we are experiencing here in Cleveland. I just want to start out with some preliminary announcements. So on Saturday, August the 5th, from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., we will have a Glenville's Got Talent competition, and it's from ages 5 to 18. Anyone who is interested, feel free to go on our Facebook page and look at the flyer. The winner of the competition will have an opportunity to perform at the Glenville Festival on August 12th. On Friday, August 11th, from 12 p.m., our very own Bone Thugs and Harmony will be receiving, we'll have their renaming ceremony on East 99th at 12 p.m. And then on Saturday, of course, is the Glenville Festival from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. At Sam Miller Park, 88th and St. Clair. Bone Thugs and Harmony will be this year's headliners, along with various DJs and rappers. We will be commemorating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And speaking of hip hop here in Cleveland, we have our very own, Cleveland's very own DJ Phatty, who's a music DJ. He's also a music and film producer, a soundboard operator, and engineer, and the executive director of Reading Ram here in Cleveland. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Doing
That
good.
was a mouthful. Huh?
Did I get everything correct?
Kinda.
Okay.
We'll take it.
Okay. All right, so we just gonna start off with some background questions because I like to get to know my guests and their background. So tell me about like your family life and growing up, and how hip hop influenced you in your early years.
Well, I was the oldest of my siblings, and I don't call half and step and all that, but I was the oldest of a pretty big group of kids. My initial family with my mom, I had a younger brother and sister. I was 5 years older than my next sibling. So, and then when you like, you the oldest male and no daddy in the house, so you take on that role of cutting the grass and landscaping and washing floors, clothes, and all that. But I feel like that prepared me for getting custody of my children. So. Okay. I ended up having to get custody of like 4 of my kids in my 20s. Probably had the worst career as a DJ to be raising kids as a single father, but that's a whole nother story. But definitely, my mom nurtured me, and but I was probably angry about like the domestic violence she was dealing with, verbal. A lot of verbal domestic violence, things of that nature of my stepfather. And that's probably where my anger came from at the time. And then I got fixed by going to Murders Taylor. I went to anger management at 12 after an incident at the YMCA, getting bullied. But I was getting bullied, and I retaliated, and they was trying to put my mama, sue my mama and all kind of stuff. So people stood up for me. And instead of like the DH or anything, they put me at Murders Taylor, and that saved me. And that's when I started DJing.
Okay. And it seems, obviously you have a very interesting background, and it's about tenacity and strength, and how music played a role in it. How has living in Cleveland inspired your music in particular? You talked about it briefly, but can you kind of expound upon it?
Well, I feel like I named my company Divided We Fall in my early 20s because I felt like that was a big problem with our city embracing itself. We kind of looked at all the other markets like you got to be in New York or LA. Even Atlanta wasn't what Atlanta is now in my early years. So I felt like I always tried to bring our artists together. So even though I was a artist myself, I was always producing, getting cats to do collabs when they wasn't working with each other, trying to explain to them like, well, our city is real neighborhood oriented. So if you from EC, I ain't listening to you unless you from EC, vice versa, if you on St. Clair. So, okay, if y'all do a record together now, y'all forced to
Right.
both groups is,
Right.
and they started feeling me. And so some of the biggest records from the city came from collabs like that.
Okay. When did you start rapping and DJing? Like what year?
I want to say I did a stint in the military, but when I came back, I probably started writing like at 18, 19, and I was just DJing probably at 15 up to 8. So for about my first 3 years, I was just strictly DJing and making mixtapes and stuff like that.
Okay. And then you I think you really answered this next question, but I'm gonna ask it again just for GP. So do you feel like Cleveland, like specifically like the hip hop community, provides support for other rappers, within the confines of Cleveland, or do you feel like they can do better?
We can always do better. It's like a select core that I feel like really support each other. But a lot of the artists that get like say a super hot record, they kind of like just take off on their own, and then they start ending up in other markets because they don't get the support. They look, it's almost like, let's take a person like Ray Cash. Everybody they love Ray Cash everywhere, like because he had a similar sound to UGK, which was a real popular group with a lot of people from my era. And then in the city, he used to just get a whole lot of nonsense like, I don't never see you out here, because he repping where he from. He got signed to Sony, and he claiming East Cleveland because y'all didn't see him. Maybe y'all just wasn't in the same spots.
Right.
But I don't know why artists never took it as a way like, look, support that man. Now you at least know one person that's connected to somebody you need to be connected to. And we always just hate on each other, or you jealous because he got a deal. If people just understand relationships is what get deals. Relationships get contracts. It's the relationship get you a new job, a raise. It's a relationship. And we got a terrible problem with building relationships in our market, period. Not just music, but across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember because I'm 33, which means that I was like in high school. I was in high school in like 2004, 2005, and I remember when I Done Came Down came out by Alfats, and I remember they played it all over Cleveland like that was like an anthem, the Cleveland anthem. But then I started hearing it outside of Ohio, like in Texas and everything else. So I can probably imagine that's
so
what
that
he went
record
through.
got made right on 94-19 Lamont. To get super specific. So LeBron, Rich, all them used to be at my house.
Wow.
Right over there on Lamont. So I stayed on Crawford, but I had a whole little studio in the basement of my little fort. It was 8 kids in there. In a 4-bedroom right there on Lamont, right next to the field, right next to the school. So I stayed in this area for about 7-8 years, and then I moved to Euclid from over here. But Came Down, and I feel like Came Down took off because adults didn't have nothing to do with it.
Right.
So you was in high school, so you had MySpace. Y'all could share music, and then at the time, older cats like me was disrespecting the internet. We used to the old way you did things, going around putting posters on walls and pose. When you had this digital thing brewing and young people, they interested in new stuff. So MySpace and young people not having to ask their mama what they listening to.
Right.
You don't got to buy me. Mom had to buy my records that had explicit versions on it and blah, 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 right? Different era. And that's why that record took off, because the haters couldn't get involved with it. A kid, young people, hey, if I like it, I don't care that he don't got them cars he talking about. He was just talking about coming down. He wasn't trying. So that's how I feel like people go out of their way. Like, man, he don't got no whip, so I'm not going to listen to the song. But that's not what hip hop is. Hip hop is telling stories. You know what I'm saying? Then it evolved into, and I know that's a question you probably want to ask me down the road, so I won't go deep into that. But I feel like we've had the artists, we've definitely had the sound, and we've gotten in front of in our own way. Is why we're not an industry city as far as music go. I still not for hip hop, because I feel like rock has done well from this area. Jazz has done well. There's several people with Grammys and everything else from our area. But as far as hip hop, a lot of our artists and even R&B artists like Avant and folks like that, everybody had to go somewhere else to flourish because of what they was dealing with here.
Absolutely. And then so we gonna and you definitely are someone who provides support in various ways, but still within the confines of music. So you're the executive director of Reading Ram. So can you talk to us about the organization, like background, mission, purpose, and stuff?
Reading Ram was created from my own children. So we was working with remember when the kids passed Superior?
Oh yeah.
9 kids in the house.
In the firehouse fire. Yeah, I was in high school when that happened.
Yeah,
too.
so 3 of the kids used to play basketball right over there on Lamont with my kids.
Wow.
And when it happened, you know, my kids was just like, we want to do something, or you know, so we made that song "Missing You," and I was scared to I wanted to do something, right? So instead of I didn't want to get involved with the money part of it, like taking money in, because people like to turn like when they don't know your heart or your morals or who you are, they just he's just using that tragedy to make money. So what I did was all my manufacturers I used at the time for making CDs and pressing CDs, I got everybody I dealt with to donate, and we pressed up about 10,000 copies, and we gave them out, but it said the key bank's information on it, where to take the donation. So that was so I feel like that was the beginning of Reading Ram. RAM stands for Recording Arts, Music, and Media. Then we started a few people, before you know it, Usher caught wind of my kids. So we had flew down to Atlanta a few times, but they were still getting, so my kids went to they terrorized every school over here. Raper, Mary B. Martin, Wilson, you name it, my kids was in them schools. But really what was happening, they was dealing with mental health. They didn't have a mom. I was raising them. So I can't even put my feet in my own kids' shoes, because I at least had my mom, even though my dad's wasn't in my life like they should. And there's a lot of kids, that's kind of how it go most of the time. But imagine when you don't have the nurturer that a mom is.
Right.
So that's really why my kids were struggling. If I knew now, I probably could have supported my kids a little bit more because with the mental health piece of it, right? I'm just trying to provide for them, make sure they had their haves, their needs. I might couldn't have got all they wants, but my kids had all their needs, and they kept getting suspended in school for behavior issues. So one of my sons was at Giddings on 71st when it was still open. And so I went into the school one day, just popped up on them, and they was battle rapping during science class.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. So I could tell the teacher was like ready to retire, and he just didn't care no more. You know what I'm saying? So I came up with the idea right on the spot. I'm gonna come. I asked the principal, could I come in the next day? I'll bring, and I'm gonna make a song in front of them, but I'm gonna trick them and make them rap about science.
Right.
After I make the beat, after I get them excited, you know. And I was just doing this purely trying to save my own child. But once I saw, it don't matter what I'm telling my own kid. Now you in a classroom of 30 other people acting the same way. So that's where Reading Ram started. After we did it was a song about matter. I made them. They all passed because my son was failing like everybody else. It was a intervention program for science, right? So they all passed the project, passed the test because they rapped about it.
Right.
I just made it interesting. Then a teacher pulled me to the side and was like, "That's called project-based learning." And I'm like, okay. So I started looking into what project-based learning was. And it just purely evolved like that. So I did it in kind. Maybe the first year I had a project called I Read Before I Rap.
Okay.
And then Fatima, Miss Ray, asked would I come down there and work with her summer kids and I'll pay you. And I'm like, you'll pay me? So it just went from me doing it for free to somebody started paying me. And I just feel like I was blessed to run into people who really saw what I was trying to do and organically and just genuinely a lot of the things I would have learned in college, universities for education and things of that, they was just teaching me. But I was absorbing it like a sponge. I started going to classes. A lot of the classes, Case Western Reserve, Do for All or nonprofit organizations, they just started either giving me a grant to go or just inviting me to go. And that's pretty much how I learned how to work with young people. That was like my schooling, hands on.
That and that's really cool. That's really dope because now you have programs like with the Cuyahoga County Public Library. They got studios in the actual libraries that encourage kids to go in and record about like educational matters. And I think that the Boys and Girls Club have something similar to that. So for you to start a pilot program and everybody to emulate it is pretty dope. And then the fact that you talked about like the mental health piece of it. You so many rappers that have came out and talked about the importance of mental health, like Kid Cudi, who's from Shaker, and then Big Sean, who's one of my faves, has talked about mental health. So I think that that's pretty dope.
I feel like if you black and you grew up in a underserved community, you have some form of mental health issue. It's
absolutely.
Your support system is how you dealt with it better. The kid with the lack of support gonna struggle more than the kid, but everybody deals with a certain amount of mental health if you come from our environments. You can't help but to have it. It's a lot of violence, but you just feel like it's normal. So you just walk around, but it's not normal.
Yeah.
So that's why it's good to get our kids away from their common environments and expose them to. So I love taking kids on trips. So Youth Renaissance, it came from taking East Tech to Harlem. And I liked it, the whole Renaissance movement, but we wrapped the project around social studies because the Harlem Renaissance is in Common Core, right? So I called our youth program the Youth Renaissance. And that's it. Just kind of everything has been happening organically. I didn't plan it like this, but it just, I believe I should be doing this.
Yeah, because it was really God ordained. And then my next question is, as we know, it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. What do you think about the status of hip hop now?
I just feel like we get the narrative. We have a bad narrative on this because of the stigma of what it has turned into. I feel like in the past, and I'm not I'm not gonna sit up here and act like I didn't make dark records in the past, but we told the whole story. Meaning, if you're gonna act like this is what's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? I feel like hip hop just started talking, like promoting the negative of, yeah, people are selling drugs because they can't get a job, or they feel like they can't get a job, or they couldn't learn nothing in school to get the skills. You know,
Right.
like, why did they take all the trades out the school?
That is true.
So all my new programming has trades involved with it because every kid has never went to college. We always needed people to go into the trades because you need that to do a lot of the other things, mechanic, construct. So when I went to Kennedy, I got turned out on broadcasting these microphones in high school. So I found my passion right in high school because they built us a studio in the original John F. Kennedy on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
But that was like my sophomore year. Then I was able to do the curriculum the 11th and 12th grade year. But that really just, I was hooked, you know, on my career. But I did drafting at Kennedy. I was excellent at it. I could draw. So that really gave me the skill to build studios. The home I just purchased a few years ago, I was able to convert the whole basement, do electrical. Okay. But it's because it came from, a lot of it started in high school. Right. So why did you take that out of the high schools? Teaching our people in our communities trades. Because I feel like everybody keeps saying they want to, you got to get out of the hood. Like move out, buy the hood and fix it.
Yeah.
And take care of it after you fix it. You don't got to go nowhere because what's going to happen if we keep moving away from the hood, somebody else is going to come buy the hood and then price you out of it.
Yeah, that's what Jay-Z talked about in 444.
Yeah, it's gentrification and that's what's going to happen to EC. That's what's going to happen to all our communities, that if we keep looking at it like it's a slum because we let it get like that, but it's also a slum because when a young person who might have a couple dollars, they look at it and like, I don't want that. But all it is some drywall. That's all it is. Yeah. A little PVC, drywall, a little couple 2x4s, and some paint.
Right.
And it's good. But if you don't have a clue how to do none of that,
then it's overwhelming.
So now when somebody who got construction skills and stuff, they see that house, that's about $4,000-$5,000. And it need a roof. That's about another $5-6 more. Buy the hood and fix it.
Yeah.
And, so look at what's happening in Huff.
Yeah.
All these beautiful, nice buildings. Now, when I was over here, when I lived here, that was about 15 years ago or so. It wasn't none of that going on. But are we going to be able to afford our people, whatever all this stuff that's coming up? Can we live in it, or is that going to be the doctors at Cleveland Clinic living in it?
Right. Because gentrification is real.
Yes, it is.
So, okay, so you really did talk about this. Well, we kind of talked about this. Do you think that in recent years that hip hop has played a role in community engagement, specifically in Cleveland? Like, I'm gonna give you an example. So, I think last year I saw a news report where MGK was handing out turkeys and gift cards. In a gas station, I believe, not far from here. Do you think that that's like an ongoing trend here in Cleveland?
Well, some of the key artists. Take, for instance, Ray Jr. is an artist. Made his first recording, started his whole career. Most of his big records, I did his big records, like Nosebleeds, like his whole career. But he's always giving back. He's always done a turkey drive since the beginning. So I feel like key artists all have got involved with doing things. Pooh in his community. Preem has done his few things in this area. Stroke does a lot of things in the Huff area because his family is still in this area up at Thurgood and things like. So I feel like there's been several artists that have done a lot with who they were to give back to the same people. So, but we need to do more.
Right.
So my key thing now is on community engagement. This year's Glenville Fest will be the first time hip hop will be displayed in a public venue in years.
Yeah.
Like a lot of years. like think about it. And so I came up with a project or how I'm gonna work with our artists. It's called Mind Music. So MIND, like mind. Like you need to understand, you need to be just appropriate sometimes. So is that record appropriate in a public venue with families?
Right.
And keep it real with yourself. And most of them will be like, well, I guess, nah. Okay, so that's why you're not at the Wade Oval. And you can't complain about it. Because I wouldn't put you in the Wade Oval either. And I'm born and raised hip hop, but I can't play that and expect to be able to play the Wade Oval again if I had y'all at the Wade Oval. So what I've been doing for the 50th, because I'm passionate about it because it technically saved my life. Like I'm a couple years older than hip hop, so I know it backwards and forward. But I'm making everybody write everything. So I'm doing a record even with Joe Little. I tried to do it with a young man. His mom has 4-stage cancer, right? But my family was doing their event, like did the balloons and the decorations. So they picked me up from the airport. I'm sitting there and they said, well, I want my son to rap for y'all. And he did a typical trap record. It was not appropriate to be playing at a fundraiser for your mom. So I said, you know what? I want to make a record for you. And I want to make a record for you so you could talk to your mama directly and it be appropriate, right? So I came up with Written All Over Your Face. So I flipped the record, talked to Joe about it. He loved it. His mom dealing with cancer. So we was going to wrap the whole record around cancer. And then I felt like the young man lost his, like, I shouldn't be having to call you wondering why you ain't called me, blah, blah. But people scared to rap. And I know he's never made a record where you talking about something that's real. It's more people struggling than
it is people living a life. Yeah.
We want to hear records like that. You know, inspiring, a record of resiliency. And I feel like that's what hip hop lost. Where are all those records at? Where's the Unity record? Like Queen Latifah, she got a Grammy for it. It was #1 on the charts, but she was talking about domestic violence between women and men, calling a female B. You know what I'm saying? Like all the social activist records we made in the past, and they was hits. It wasn't just like a record on the album. No, it was in rotation on the radio. Fight the Power. It was on rotation in the radio. Self-Destruction, which was about gun violence. So what I did with all my programs, I made them make content for the Glenville Festival. So kids are going to do all the journalism and teach people what hip hop really is. It's graffiti. It's MCing, it's DJing, and it's dancing. That's art. Yeah. That's in culture. And then they're going to explain what a storyteller is. They're going to explain what social activism that was done with hip hop. So the only recentest record I feel like was like a past was Lil Baby's Bigger Picture. So whenever I run into him, I'm going to commend him for that because he was big for that. You notice, so I felt like when he made that record, Bigger Picture, I felt like that would spark more of his generation to come out and start speaking on
Right.
George Floyd and
issues.
everything that's happening,
Yeah.
and use your platform instead of just promoting the negative side of being from an underprivileged community where it's a lot of people selling drugs and blah blah this and blah, and that's all we talk about in the strip clubs and what about nobody voting? You know, what about that? What about his 300,000 people in Cleveland and only 10% came out and voted that was registered? You know, stuff like that.
Right.
Why aren't we talking about that stuff?
Right.
So that's what I did with my kids the whole summer. And I feel like it's going to be awesome for people to see young people learning about really because I really just want to reintroduce the community. This is hip hop. This is what it can look like in a public venue. I also feel like I'm going to be teaching the artists, like, if you got 10 to 12 songs on your project, why can't 2 or 3 of your records go straight at mental health or social emotional learning, where you just talking about something that's real, something that every family deal with. You know what I'm saying?
And I think it can still be like, it can sell too. Like, it's, you know, the album is old, but it's still a classic. You know, Kendrick's "To Pimp a Butterfly."
Right.
I mean, it just talks about social justice issues, and it's one of the most successful, you know, albums of all time. Is in the Library of Congress and everything else. So it can be done.
Perfect. You see it done, but are you gonna like buy into it? And maybe that's what's wrong with your mental health,
right?
That you don't understand what he just did. You feel me?
Right.
Like, and that just show you people walk around like it's normal, but it's not. How you thinking is not normal.
Yeah.
You thinking like that because you just in like survival mode.
Yeah, because it's an institutionalization.
You feel what I'm saying? So. Yeah.
And then, well, you talked about it, and you know, because we do have a special election on August 8th, and so we're not going to talk about who to vote for because we got to be nonpartisan.
Right.
Considering that we do have a special election, and you talked about this, do you think that hip hop artists, specifically locally, is still encouraging civic engagement?
That's so. All I can say is we made a social activist song that is called Socially Active, and we took all the titles of older social activist songs and wrote them into a hook. But one of the lines one of the kids wrote in the third verse was she talked about how many people come out and vote in the elections that you so like this special election, that's one of them elections where we don't show up at all. But a lot of times that's where your judges.
Yeah.
How many of our people gonna see a judge? And we don't vote. You don't never pick the person that gotta counsel us.
Yeah.
Or judges. Like, you know what I'm saying? We don't never vote for those. We'll come out. And we only come out half the way for the president, right? We don't never vote for in the mayor. What, the mayor will come out a little bit for the mayor, but what about your councilmen? What about your judges? What about your senators? You know, your county, because
that's just as important, if not important, because they
I
represent.
Feel like me personally. The man I can go touch is more important than the president.
Yeah, because it's it's a direct legislative action.
That's your first way to get to the president.
Yeah, of course.
Is touching the guy you know where his address. You know where he lives.
Right.
It's public record where he lives.
Yeah.
You can go knock on his door technically and say, "Hey, I'm having a problem."
And he represents
issue. Right, but you don't never pick him. Right. We don't never vote for him.
Right.
We don't never vote for the person that gave your son 15 years.
Yeah.
Tried you as an adult. Now, some of the decisions some of our young people making, you need to be charged. You need to be charged as an adult for what you did. And that's something, and I thought about it this morning. I woke up and said, I need to get a couple of people to make a PSA about how we use the term snitch, right?
Okay, because that's definitely prevalent.
That's killing
in
our whole community. A snitch is when I do a crime, say me and you, say I get you to come, we go do something, right? And then I just tell on you and don't say that's a snitch.
Right.
We use because I saw somebody do something. That's snitching.
Yeah, it's
That we using it in the wrong. And I used to be mad at my own kids. You know your son, you know your brother is doing something that's hazardous to the family, himself, and everybody else, and you didn't tell me. You know what I'm saying? I ain't want to snitch on him, but that's your brother. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sitting up here acting like it didn't affect my own household because I got the son, one of my sons I adopted when I was here. When I stayed on Crawford, he was 2 days old. But he had to plead the 23 years for an incident on complicity, meaning we don't know who did what. They was all together. And they pled the 23 years. They didn't plead to get like 3-4. No, they pled to get 23 so they didn't get life. And he was 18. He didn't even have a jaywalking ticket. And he used to, so I moved him from Euclid. I was even staying out Willoughby. And he just would hang out down here just with the knucklehead. But he was choosing to that. And I had to learn how to not be so stressed out from decisions my kids was making because it used to stress me out. My mental health was bad for a minute because I'm worried about decisions they making. So all they can do is learn from from mistakes. So my youngest son just graduated, 18. He the last one, right? Right. He the one, and it's funny, he the one with my full name. No kid had my full name. I'm like somebody, and that happened over here on Huff in the same area. Like a lot of this stuff happened over here, but I'm like, no, somebody gonna have my whole name. Somebody gonna be my junior. So the kid I called my junior was my last kid, and he the one that act the most like me, but so you can do it. Like the kids made a song called Same Street. You can come from the same environment and just make bad choices. This kid made good choices. And they made it right out of this same environment because of the word resiliency. So which kid are you going to be?
Right.
Because there's a whole lot of examples of people making it from these communities. And that child went through everything. All his older siblings going to jail. There's a lot of households because it was modeled to the kid. They fell in the same trap. But that's a pure example even in my own household that I'm proud of him because he easily could have just went the same road a lot of his older siblings went.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But that also shows his support system was a little different than my older kids because I didn't know or understand. I went to anger management, but I didn't call it mental health. I just remember going to Murders Taylor. But everything come full circle. So now I'm sitting in these trainings because I want to go make some beats with some kids to make them rap about science and social studies. So now they introduced me to social emotional learning and all these concepts. And then I started putting 2 and 2 together like, oh, this is what my kids was doing.
Right.
So maybe I could have helped them better if I would have supported the mental health of them not having a mom. Because dads, we don't kiss and give Twinkies.
Yeah.
When you cut something, we just tell you brush it off, bruh. Let's go. You know what I mean? So.
Okay, well, I'm really close to my mom, and so I can definitely understand the dynamic. Because my dad, he's like really, he taught me how to be tough, but my mom taught me how to be empathetic. So I guess it's definitely a difference when you miss out
both.
on that.
You need mom and dad, right? But I feel like mom provides something a little more in them earlier stages that a kid need. And it's just, to me, because the dad, like when I stayed over here, A lot of my kids would complain I was never home. It's 10 of y'all and don't nobody work. So how can I be home?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, come on now. So now our relationships are better. Why? Because you got one and you struggling. And you know, Dad, this, and that. Okay, now multiply by 8. Can I get a pass yet? So I'm getting my passes now. Because they going through it.
Right.
With they one.
Yeah.
And it was 8 of y'all. Okay? So yeah, the hair don't grow. You know, like I got signs. You know, like I'll show you, like they was all in one house. They was not 8 kids. I know a bunch of men with 8 kids. But was they in one house? So I had, and then you got that step dynamic or the blended family. So I don't know. My house felt like a group home, so I feel like organically I was cool to work with kids and like I ain't scared of them. A lot of people be scared.
They be scared of kids.
They scared to go work with the kids, and I'm like, dude, you can't do nothing that my own kid didn't do already. So you need to just sit down and learn something. And that's how, and then I'm vulnerable enough to say what I went through or going through. And then that's how I build them relationships with the kids. And I feel like that's why the program has been so successful.
Okay. And then let's just go to something more lighthearted.
Okay.
So who's your favorite hip hop artist from Cleveland?
From Cleveland? I mean, I guess I would have to say, I guess I would have to say Ray Jr.
Okay.
Because that's something I had my hands all over.
Sloppy was a vibe. I used to listen to that while I was in college.
Yeah. I mean, I loved how he just got it out the mud for real. And he just grinded. You know what I'm saying? So I have love for a lot of artists. But yeah, I think he's an excellent writer though.
Okay. And then what's your favorite rap songs from Cleveland, if you have any?
It's probably some records you never heard. You might hear a couple in the park, but like I felt like Nosebleeds, that was a great record. It's a lot of records, but Came Down for what it was. It just took it took the country by storm. I just felt like I wish I could have stayed in their life as a support system even after Rich and them took them. I don't think they realized how much the part I played on being like more, because they was the same age as my kids. So they was just like some more kids, the whole royalty camp. And as soon as they signed, they took them away. That's that Cleveland stuff, I feel like, where we get in our own way. Like, you probably should have just left me in place to be their producer, even if it just kept something familiar to them or somebody that could check them when they going off track.
Right.
Soon as they took them away from me, you see what happened.
Yeah. And then, we do have like a culmination of people who like follow us, from different age demographic, races. So surprisingly, there might be someone who don't know who Bone Thugs and Harmony are.
Right.
So please tell our listeners and our viewers about the legacy of Bone Thugs and why is it so important for us to commemorate their success with the street naming.
I just feel like that was the early stages of my career as well as a mixed DJ, producer, guy. I would be engineering in the studios. And they hopped on the bus. I believe it there because I don't think they could afford the plane. I think they got on the bus and went to LA with a sound, and Easy heard it. And everything else is history. It was what we would have did to Bone. Kermit was who they were signed to, right? That's who did their first project. His store is in East Cleveland. They from St. Clair. But I know how our people thought or think back then, right? how big would we have really made them because they from St. Clair was the other side of town was Harvard, Kinsman, cats gon' let bone be bone. You know what I'm saying? Is the East Cleveland where the record label that's trying to put them out gonna respect who they are. They gonna be like, why you didn't sign up? Why you doing that? You know what I'm saying? Like, we would have just found a way not to support them enough to get took, like, from here. So it took them to go to LA, get somebody else behind them in an industry city, and then look what happened. So, but they purely from here. What they talk about from here, they first records, they whole album. Eazy-E made sure they came back and shot the video right in Cleveland on St. Clair. Like, even though he got signed to them, people respect you more when you rep who you are. One of my biggest selling mix CDs, it had Cleveland got the hardest MFs on earth, right? Was on the shirt. And that was on my CD cover. And that CD sold crazy everywhere. They didn't care that, like, down in Atlanta, I was traveling to Atlanta selling CD. You know, they just respected me from where I was from. And I feel like the main reason why Cleveland took on to my music the way they did, they thought I was from somewhere else. I'm like, no, I'm from here. They thought Phatty Banks was from, because my DJ name was Fat Skills at first. But my first mix CD I put out, I changed it to Phatty Banks because of Midwest Mafia. So Midwest Mafia was my group I produced. But I'm like, Skills sound like a New York name.
Right.
That sound like you from New York. And I always been about Cleveland. So I'm like, I need a name that fit with. So if you listen to Stay True, it's a video on YouTube. We can't play it on the airs here. There's a few explicits in there. But the record was crazy. Like, all the people we got to be in the video, all the cars that was hot at the time. We hardly didn't have no police or no security. And everybody got along because they really supported the record. But it was almost like they thought we was from somewhere else or something. And all I did was drop the Skills, turn Fat to Phatty, and use my real last name, Phatty Banks. That's where it came from.
Yeah, and it's all about the authenticity of being from Cleveland. I think that's why Bone has been able to be so successful, because they're still who they are. They're still from East 99th. They're still from St. Clair, but they've worked with everyone from Mariah Carey, Phil Collins, you name everyone.
So Chip, so you know, Chip you remember?
Yeah,
okay,
Chip
so
the Ripper.
Chip came out of Off Huff too. Couple of his Fitted got made right there. Okay,
I like that song too. That was a vibe to see. All of that came out when I was in high school.
That came out. That got produced right over there on Crawford. Lamont. I was at Lamont then. But what I love about Chip is, I just was with him in LA. He got a beautiful home. And you know it's expensive. It's real. If you go to LA and Atlanta and some of these markets, yeah, you better come with your pockets right, or how you gonna make $1, or you gonna be right back here again, right? And he doing well for himself, but he rep Cleveland, but he in LA.
Right. Like,
one of his projects called Cleveland to something Hollywood or something, what do you call it? Or Bel Air?
Yeah, I haven't been following since I've been in high school.
But Chip was just here this weekend, so he must have performed somewhere, but he flew right back out at 5 a.m. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at him, because he connecting with the people. Like, his studio's across the street from Kevin Hart's studio. You know what I'm saying? So, but people respect when you, just like how we listen to Houston, we listen to Atlanta, we respect you.
Right.
So why don't we respect ourselves?
Right.
They respect themselves. They'll blow their own artists up in their own markets.
Right.
Like, I remember when I went to Atlanta, and the club we had to perform at, there was a paper on the wall that said, Gucci Man, $25 a head. I'm a DJ and don't know who is Gucci Man. So this is how big he had got
in Atlanta
before we even knew about him, right? So it took a DJ to take it out that market And Cleveland blows up so people need to realize Cleveland is like the starting point to put any records in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. The whole Midwest go by what we listening to. So we made Master P, we made Mike Jones, we made Jeezy. Mm-hmm. Jeezy was hot in Atlanta, but how do he get hot in Chicago, Cincinnati, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Philly? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It go through Cleveland because we had the most mom and pop stores. Right. So we a lot of people back in the day, we had about 20, 30 mom and pop stores, and they was SoundScan. Okay. And so we was really a huge market for the hip hop industry. Mm-hmm. They ran a lot of music through us as like an incubator to everybody else. Mm-hmm. But if we the machine, we a big part of the machine. All we had to do was respect our own artists the same way they respected theirs. Play our music on the radio, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wish could have been done differently, because we really was the machine and we just didn't wake up.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can, because I think we got a lot of like potential here. Like not only people like we know Kid Cudi, MGK, mm-hmm. And then also people don't know the Baby is from mm-hmm. Cleveland. Well, he was born in Cleveland, but he was raised in North Carolina. So we do have a lot of talent here. And then also Chip the Ripper, Al Fast, Ray Jr., mm-hmm. and Ray Cash. There's a lot of mm-hmm. talent here that's from Cleveland that people just don't know about. Right. So what can we look forward to at this year's Glenville Festival? Because it's gonna be big.
Well, we're going to do a tribute to Silver B. Mm-hmm. I already made a trip to Atlanta to interview a couple key people that was around him. That's how serious I'm taking it. So I didn't just want people to get up and talk about Silver B. We're going to make a film out of it. Okay. So we're going to have a screen at this year's Glenville Fest so we can play videos. We're going to do a mashup. Where we're going to play the song Hip Hop Sample. So the band is going to play the Isley Brothers or something. So I can still give the community some R&B, mm-hmm. even though I want to wrap everything around hip hop. So I'm like, you know what? A lot of hip hop sample jazz, hip hop, and everything else. So we're going to play those. You're going to hear live jazz, mm-hmm. live R&B, mm-hmm. and then it's going to flip into the hip-hop version of it. So we're going to do a back-and-forth mashup. It's a car show, USA Boxing, the sanctioned boxing, because I had to go pay for the sanction, right?
I grew up in a boxing family, so I was excited about that.
Okay, you got some real. So it's people coming from Michigan, Pennsylvania to come box. Mm-hmm. We're going to have 2 stages. So it's going to be a few community artists that understood the assignment. So I'm making everybody write everything. If you didn't have a record like the messaging I wanted in the park that day, I give you an opportunity to write something else, produce something else. We're doing ciphers with everybody from like MC Chill, who was one of the first artists signed to it. He was the first artist signed from Cleveland to a major record label. Mm. But MC Chill, so all the eras up to the new, I'm trying to do about 4 or 5 ciphers, mm-hmm. as long as they understood the assignment. Right. Some people, if you can't rap without an explicit or a sexual reference, then this might not be your event.
Right. So no ghostwriters, ladies and gentlemen.
So we definitely gonna have good vibes. Mm-hmm. Like, it's gonna be hip hop, rap music, black people, and good vibes. Okay. Right now it's a stigma on hip hop. Hip hop, black and brown people equal gun violence, drunks, mm-hmm. you know what I'm saying? Drama, fights. No. Watch how hip hop can be. Hip hop can bring people together. We just got to rebrand ourselves, mm-hmm. as far as hip hop. So I feel like this is the beginning of the rebrand or reintroducing everybody to really what hip hop is.
Excellent. And then can you give us your point of contact, social media sites and everything?
So Rampages, RAMM. So RAM stands for Recording Arts, Music, and Media. So rampages.com. A good way to see a lot of videos and projects we're doing. So shout out to my trio kids at Tri-C. We made a project called The Evolution of Music. When I leave here, I got to go back to editing. It's gonna have 5 episodes, but those kids experienced all genres, jazz, classical, country, and we showed how hip hop sampled everything to make hip hop. That'll be on. So my plan is to have it done before the Glenville Fest, so I can show an exhibit, because you will be able to get it on Tubi.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm real excited for the kids that they're gonna have a movie on a platform that most everybody can get to, because it's free.
And then that's all your social media pages?
Instagram, DJ Phatty Banks, PhattyBanks.
Okay.
Is the best. Facebook is Youth Renaissance. But I guess that's the biggest way to get to me.
Okay, well, DJ Phatty Banks, I appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Problem.
We look forward to this year's Glenville Festival and everything that you're going to have to offer us. It's going to be a whole vibe. I'm really excited about it. And once again, I thank you for coming down.
No problem.
All right.
You have a good day.
You too. See you all next month.
All right.
Bye.